Okay, so first of all, a very, very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining in on a Saturday, which is a weekend. And I would also like to thank our esteemed speakers and experts who have taken a time to interact and to share their knowledge with everybody present here. Webinar has been organized by PhVFit. We are an organization dedicated to fostering patient safety in the country. A little about myself. I'm Arshia Bhandari. I am founder of PhVFit, and I come with 15 plus years of diverse experience in the pharmacovigilance industry. I'm also a business storyteller, and I work with individuals, organizations, and educators to help them leverage the power of stories to build effective narratives in their respective areas. So what is the mission of PhVFit? PhVFit is so our mission, and we are dedicated to fostering patient safety leadership in the country. In my journey through pharmacovigilance, I identified very early with a need to spread awareness about PV and patient safety. And as I started writing about it, I see that there are a lot of like-minded people who feel the same and who are there to collaborate on this. So one of our missions first is to foster patient safety leadership in the country and spread awareness about PV and patient safety through collaborations with medical colleges, hospitals, pharma institutes, and schools. And secondly, for which we have collected today, is of course training and coaching. So it's about helping the life science stream students and professionals find the right direction, opportunities, and find a career path aligning with their ikigai or mojo. We'll also be offering domain-based training and mentoring. So coming to what we are doing today here, we are the webinar today is opportunities and perspectives in life sciences. And to introduce to you, we have our expert panel from the industry from different domains. We have Sheetal Sharma, who's Senior Director, Health Outcomes and Research in PhRMac International. Avishek Pal, who is Director, Scientific Communication, Cell and Gene Therapy, Novartis, and Amit Gupta, who is a Principal Medical Writer in Safety Science, working with PhRMac International. And I will be moderating the event. So the agenda, so we have the 3 speaker presentations. And first, I would like to invite Sheetal Sharma for her first presentation. She would be sharing with you her journey in health economics and outcomes research. To introduce Sheetal, Sheetal is a microbiologist by training and a health economics and research professional with a passion of bringing treatments to patients. She has 16 plus years of experience in pharmaceutical consulting industry with expertise in various therapeutic areas, including oncology, respiratory autoimmune diseases, neuroscience, cardiovascular, women's health and rare diseases. She has worked on a number of HTA submissions across a wide variety of disease areas and supported commercialization of pharmaceutical products across EU and US markets. She has been involved in operations management, business strategy and innovation, and is a service line leader in her current organization. She has been awarded for exemplary performance in the category of quality. Sheetal holds Prince 2 certification in project management and BHBIA certification in adverse event reporting and legal and ethical guidelines for market researchers. She has 20 plus international publications in HEOR. So I invite you, Sheetal, to share your knowledge and your journey and extensive experience in this field.
Thank you so much, Arshia.
Yeah, would you be sharing your presentation or should I share it for you?
You can share, that would be great.
Okay, great. Just give me a moment.
time, I think I can thank you, Arshia, for the kind words as well as for this opportunity of sharing my career journey with all the participants here. I hope it was way. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Sheetal, your voice is breaking a little. If you could be a little more loud, it will help.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah, it's better.
Okay, so going a little back, I would say, in terms of my journey within HEOR, or overall in life sciences domain. Next slide, Arshia. Yeah, so I did my MSc honors in microbiology eons ago. And after that, obviously, I had two options. One, to pursue my PhD, and the second was to start a career in industry. At that point in time, I would say simply, for the fascination of being a working professional, I thought of starting a career and, taking a break later on for my PhD. I, started with the pharmacovigilance group in India. And at that point in time, so this is 2004, 2005, PB, there were very few companies, I think, that were doing PB in India, and particularly northern region, not any organization. So I joined a small group, and I would say that it was a very rewarding experience, a learning experience for me. I was involved in individual case reporting, narrative writing, and gradually, within a period of 3 years, I moved into management. Was contributing as an individual contributor as well as managing the small team. And I think that did lay a foundation of operations management. So I, kind of learned how to manage a team besides doing the SME activities, subject matter expert activities. And then after about 3 years, I started exploring additional opportunities in the field of life sciences. So I thought that maybe I should learn more within life sciences. And again, at that point in time, a UK-based organization just set up their operations in India. That was the first organization in India to work in HEOR. So the reason I mentioned that is because I joined that firm and none of us had any trainings, no understanding. All I knew was that HEOR is an area that bridges the gap between development of treatments and access to patients. And that felt very interesting to me. So, the fact of looking at outcomes, the value of those outcomes, and then how they help in access to patients. And, so 13 years back, my journey in HEOR started. And till date, I would say, it's such a pleasure being part of HEOR. Again, in this organization, I started with a project management role. So I was managing the team, line management, and managing the project team. Because this was a new area, a new field without any training. So it was more, on the job or learning from our colleagues in different countries where HTA was already established. So it was a lot of learning process. And over the years, over 3 years, we set up independent center of excellence in India, which means that, we were bringing in business, we were speaking with our clients, attending all the bid defense and delivering end to end. So I think it was a great achievement. Within the HEOR, I've been part of, I've started as a project manager, then moved into a project director role, then eventually, moved into a service line role wherein I was responsible or am responsible for delivery for the entire unit when it comes to HEOR in India. And along with that, operations management, business strategy, account strategies, so all the financial aspects of a successful business. That is my current role within my current organization. So I'm part of PharExcel, as Arshia mentioned, and really enjoying my journey here. So go to the next slide. Yeah. Like I said, HEOR really promotes equitable health systems and access. And that is what is something really, pleasure. I would say it gives me a lot of satisfaction when it comes to doing something which is really meaningful in terms of the life science domain, or bringing, like I said, intervention, cost-effective interventions or innovative medicines to the patients. And just to provide a little bit more about myself, in terms of skills, and I just here, and this is this list came from feedback from my team members, colleagues, and my management. The reason I mentioned them here is because I think many of you did mention that we're looking for a switch from one domain to another. So I think being focused, being passionate about the area, also being very optimistic, because there's a lot of training and learning that goes into it, a lot of self-learning and self-training. There are many, domain-specific certifications. There are trainings available now online, which are really helpful, I feel. And at the same time, there's a lot of, self-learning that needs to happen. On the job, you need to spend more time. Just wanted to mention that these skills came very handy for me. And now in the leadership role, I strongly in servant leadership, and also from an organization perspective, or from any team perspective, diversity and inclusion. In my current organization, I'm a champion for D&I, and really encourage that. I think all the organizations are now working with diversity and inclusion. That definitely helps in making a strong workforce. Next slide. I think before that, any questions around the journey, like anything that you would like to know more about from one domain to another, or HEOR in general? So Arshia, maybe we can have the poll, the first question.
Yeah, so so that poll I had to introduce earlier, but I'll introduce that now. Because it's important, for us also to understand the audience that is there. So I'm launching a poll, and I'll request everybody to please give your votes there. It's a very simple poll, a very simple question. Please participate wholeheartedly. Okay, I've launched the poll. Can you see it on your screens now?
Yeah, it did come up.
A lot of votes are coming. So yeah, thank you everyone for participating in it and for giving your vote. All right, so we have the poll has ended, and all 17 of our participants have voted. So we have 9 out of 53% people here, 9 out of 17 who are freshers, and 8 out of 17, as in 47%, who are already working. I'll share the poll just for everybody here. All right, yeah. Can you see the results? Yeah. So it gives us, to the speakers as well, it will help the speakers to really understand the audience here and to, understand what is it that you are looking for. So again, I'll say, please feel free to ask any questions. You can raise your hand, and, you can ask the question that that's going on in your mind. All right. Shall we continue, Sheetal?
Yeah. Maybe we can have the second question, Arshia.
Sorry?
For the poll, there was a question around HTA.
Oh, did you send a question? I think I've missed.
No worries. No worries. All right. That's fine. So, yeah. So I think I just wanted to touch base around the HEOR domain a little bit, because we're just focusing on the overarching domains today. In the future, I think we can also have detailed discussions. But HEOR, as you know, helps healthcare decision makers. That includes clinicians, government, payers. That includes agencies like HTA bodies, as well as health insurance companies, to compare and then select the best treatment options. In simplistic terms, what HEOR would mean. And all the pharma companies and these life sciences companies they definitely require to gather all the evidence and showcase the value of their product to the reimbursement agencies. And this is the area, or this is the need for which HEOR consultants, come into the picture and support the pharmaceutical companies. So I've given some HTA bodies examples here. You might have heard the names of NICE, which is an HTA body of the UK. I would say most robust or a defining HTA body. Many other organizations or countries have followed the NICE model when it comes to reimbursement and access. IQWiG in Germany, HAS in France, PBAC. There are also many HTA bodies in Asia, and now you might have heard of HTA-IN. And health economics outcomes research is a so there's a question from Preeti. So Preeti, there is no HTA as such for the US, but there's a body called ICER, so ICER, which does a similar work as an HTA body. They also assess which treatments should be kind of reimbursed by the insurance or health payers. It's not a government-funded body, but an agency that's looking at a similar aspect. Currently, US doesn't have an HTA body. And health economics outcomes research, the market size of it is really growing. In 2019, it was valued at $0.7 billion, and it is projected to grow at a rate of almost 13% up to 2026. As of now, HEOR is an area, like I said, many countries are adopting it, including India, and also, it in itself, the HTA process is in evolution. So, in Europe, there are multiple HTA bodies. Some of them I've listed here: Italy, Spain. There's so many other countries which have their HTA, individual HTAs. Now, HTA harmonization is in progress. They're going one step ahead and trying to make sure that there's harmonization and there are similar processes, models followed, that there's better value and the best value, I would say. As of now, there are surveys being conducted to assess the impact or value of HTA on the outcomes as well. Is it really worthwhile conducting the entire HTA process? Or maybe it is beneficial to use the money that's being spent on the HTA process in direct access to patients. There's a debate or survey that's currently going on how much value should be given to the HTA process, or how much money are we saving in the HTA process as compared to utilizing that money for the direct access. So that's been discussed. And on the next slide, so that's about the broader picture of HEOR or HTA rather. And HTA process includes HEOR as its components. HEOR is health economics and outcomes research, which means that we are evaluating the outcomes of interest, which means clinical outcomes, economic outcomes, patient-reported outcomes. So for any HTA submission, a pharmaceutical company needs to show value in terms of the clinical benefit, the economic benefit, or the quality of life benefit, which their product offers as compared to standard of care or the already approved interventions. So in order for an HTA body to reimburse a new product, the HTA body has to be sure that this is offering some advantage or is at least at par with the other product, right? And it has to be cost effective, because many of the new medicines are highly expensive. So if they are highly expensive, then what are the benefits that it is offering in terms of the clinical benefit? Is it a good balance because of which there can be reimbursement, or otherwise that product might be? So within HEOR, we have clinical, economic, and PRO evidence assessment, comparative effectiveness research, wherein you are comparing the products, or our product, client's product, with multiple other products, different analysis methods. And third is economic modeling, which is an important component of HEOR, which means that the cost effectiveness is shown via economic modeling. Real world data analysis is definitely a hot topic now. FDA and NICE, organizations like NICE, are considering how real-world data can be fit in to the assessment, and it is being asked now. And particularly for these cases where clinical trial might be difficult, or the evidence might be extremely limited. Real-world evidence is an important evidence base to showcase the value of the product. Unmet needs and value demonstration. For example, there are standard of care or treatment guidelines or recommendations for a product, and what is in public, what is in clinical practice. So, are the treatment guidelines being followed? That is one part of it, and the second part of it, that there are results for intervention, but still patients may be having some unmet needs. For example, there is toxicity associated with certain interventions, or the survival times have been in oncology, but the quality of life still is a major issue. So, what are these unmet needs, and how does a client's product fit into, those gaps, and thus providing value? So, the value demonstration part comes into the picture, and then the communication of it. So, we would like to create maybe manuscripts, and I think Avishek will talk in more detail when it comes to scientific communication side of it. But also within HEOR, you be involved in writing, for example, the manuscripts or abstracts, posters, definitely. Then HEOR reports, which actually HTA submissions, or unmet need or burden of disease reports, which actually into the global value dossiers. There is a component of doing research, the critical economic PRO assessment. There is a component of creating an economic model, and finally also communicating the research via different. So that's a brief overview of what falls into HEOR. It broadly touches the axis. In some pharma companies, you would have HEOR and access combined. In some companies, there are separate HEOR departments, but majorly the aim is that the HEOR identifies the evidence, and which is also used for access and launch of a product. So sometimes it is HEOR and pricing and market access separate domains within a particular pharma company. Sometimes it is combined as one as health, economics, and value. So it differs. But essentially the aim is that value is shown, and then it is submitted to payers and eventually helps launch and access. There could be situations where there is launch, but there isn't reimbursement. So in those cases, it would be two separate aspects. So from a qualification standpoint, because I saw that many of you are freshers as well, and you might have this question, I would say that anybody with a life sciences background with minimum post-graduation degree fits it well in the HEOR domain. If somebody has a biostats, that's definitely an advantage, because as part of the outcome, we certainly. So, which means that there are people would be either there is a team of statistical experts who are involved in doing this. But if somebody has a stats background, then for that person, it's easier to decipher and interpret the results. The MPH or epidemiology certification helps as well. Again, if you have an epi background, then doing the epidemiology, the evidence assessment of epidemiology part of it becomes much easier. But I would say that if you have a life science background post-graduation, you can easily learn about HEOR and be part of this domain. For economic modeling and real-world analytics, I would say that non-medical science, that somebody who has education in maths or physics, those individuals find it much easier. And biostats, stats definitely help. Again, not saying that somebody without a non-medical background won't be a success. It can definitely be done by training on the job, and you can be a success. I find many who worked in evidence now trying to move into modeling, because within HEOR also there can be a lot of movement. Somebody who's worked on the evidence side of things move into modeling, or somebody who's worked into evidence side of things move into market access, learn about how strategies are done. There can be, it's a broad area, and you can grow within it, horizontally, vertically. So I think before I end my topic, I just wanted some for thought. These are the 10 HEOR trends by SCOR. SCOR is professional society dealing with health outcomes a lot. And if you would like to visit the website, I think it will give a lot of knowledge and understanding about HEOR in general. Top 10 trends for HEOR are real world evidence. That's the first one. It's been trending over time, followed by drug pricing, novel therapy, overall healthcare spending, and finally precision medicine. So real world evidence as top number one. And there's a lot of focus, like I said, in identifying real world evidence, both by secondary research and primary. There could be primary studies that could help in identifying the evidence. There could be secondary research looking at what is already out there as part of observational studies, and then assessing and presenting it to reimbursement agency. So that's all from my side, and I think we will have some time towards the end of the webinar today, and I'll be happy to again answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Sheetal. It was very, very informative, and I think there's a lot of value one can derive out of what you just shared about your journey and in the health evidence and outcome research field. Thank you. So if there are any questions, maybe we have somebody asking. We have a question in the chat. Okay, so let's take one question now, and then we'll take it to the next, right? So we have Preeti asking, does HTA assessment outcome have any impact on VVC agreements? It looks like
what is VVC? Sorry.
Value-based care agreements.
Okay. I think so. It's an agreement between the pharma company and the payer, right?
Yes.
So definitely, HTA impact or HTA result would have an impact for sure, because these are kind of related to each other, right? So an HTA agency, if it gives a positive decision for a company's pharma product, it is obviously tied to contract between the payer and the manufacturer. So, there's also a talk about continuous monitoring now. So, particularly for products where there's limited evidence at a given point in time, and there is a positive approval. But over time, that needs to be assessed. So that might impact the if there is any change. So there would be a relationship.
All right, great. Thank you, Sheetal. So let me come to the next speaker of the day. Avishek, would you be okay? Let me share my screen first.
Yeah, I think you can move the slides forward.
You.
Yeah, and also no, I think you can share my slides as well after this, and maybe I can prompt you for the. Did you see the poll question?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
super.
Yes.
So then I can just maybe prompt so that you don't have to go back to my email or anything.
Yeah, of course. The polls are already there.
Okay,
so
sounds
we'll
good.
Launch them as soon as you give me a prompt that I need to launch them.
Sounds good.
All right. Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Avishek, for joining in and for coming to share your experience and your knowledge in this webinar. So Avishek is a microbiologist by training and a certified medical publications professional with more than 14 years of experience in the field of scientific communication, spanning publication management and strategy, medical education, and scientific events for global brands across cell and gene therapies, oncology, pharma, and vaccines. He has led enterprise-wide initiatives in defining and overseeing publication standards and best practices, optimizing publication management platforms, and integrating innovative digital and plain language trends into publication strategy to enhance the reach and engagement of publications. He takes active interest in data transparency initiatives, patient engagement in publications, publication ethics, and has led various workshops and training sessions on publication writing and publication ethics. In his current role as Scientific Communications Director, Cell and Gene Therapy, Novartis Oncology, Avishek leads Scientific Communications and Medical Engagement Strategy for Novartis CAR-T program. All right. Thank you, Avishek. I will be now sharing your presentation. Give me a moment.
Yeah, and next time I'm going to give a shorter one. This really sounded like a long-winded one. It's not as fancy as it sounds.
Okay, just give me a moment. I think the presentation still needs to be downloaded. Abhishek, do you have your presentation ready with you?
Yeah.
Because you have the sharing rights.
Okay.
If you can, then you can also share the presentation.
Yeah, and then maybe you can keep the voting piece open.
Yeah,
I mean,
voting is there. Voting I will be doing. So you can, yeah, you're able to share now? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And I'm probably going to. Super. Is my whole screen visible now?
Yes.
Okay, super. Thanks so much. And I think it's easier this way as well. So hi, everybody. My name is Avishek, as Arshia mentioned. Super pleased to come and present to you about medical communication. Some of you might be very, very familiar with it. Some of you may have heard of it. So essentially, the usual disclaimers. What I thought I would share with you today is, what medical communications is it really something that's for you? And sometimes when you look at things, you feel maybe that's a really nice thing and I would love to be part of that. But then I think it's always important to know more about it, try to figure out what exactly a field is like, what is it working in there. So maybe a little bit of tidbit from a first-hand experience, what kind of opportunities exist within medcoms, and then a little bit about my journey. And I was thinking at this point, Arshia, if we could have the first poll just for me to get a sense of.
Is everybody able to look at, because I think this, is everybody able to look at the slides? I hope there's no issue with the slides. There's an issue with the gallery. Just give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay, it should be fine now. All right. You want the first poll?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Brilliant. And this is more about just, so then I would probably focus on a few elements more than the rest, depending on, what kind of responses I see here. It's a very wide field.
I think yes, the polling is still happening.
Okay.
So we will give it another 2 minutes. We have 16 people who've already polled, and we have a total 18 here.
Okay. And the reason, and I will of course share more details on the next slide. Medical communications, and then some of you who have tried dabbling a little bit in it, you'll see there's so much going on around, medical writing, scientific writing, publication writing. So how are these similar? How are these different? How do they fit into the medcom space? I think these are some of the things, some of the obvious questions, and I'll try and answer those. And also, where does medcom sit within the whole realm of, scientific education? And I think it's a nice thing for me to come in after Sheetal, because she gave you an overview of some of the HEOR aspects and HT aspects, which form a good critical piece of the regulatory strategy of any pharma organization. Then where does Medcom sit? That's an important piece. Arshia, do we have the?
Yeah, we have 17 of 19 people. So I'll end the poll now.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah,
and,
let's go with it.
Let's see the results.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you see the results?
Yes, I can. Super. Thank you. So yeah, it gives me a sense of where we are with this. So talking about medcoms, and you will hear medcoms, you will hear psychoms, and I think this is one of the challenges of really trying to identify what this includes. Like I said, let me put in place, essentially where does medcoms fit into the whole realm of things. When a product or a molecule, in the development phase of it, it needs, preclinical assessments about, the dosing, about safety, animal models, and then it comes in first in human, then has phase 1 to phase 3. In some cases, like oncology, submissions, regulatory submissions happen immediately at phase 2. Some of the other pharma products up to phase 3. And then, of course, post-marketing, which is phase 4. And that's where the regulatory side of things come in, protocols, trial protocols, study reports after the results are available, analysis plans, the safety updates, investigator brochures. So these are details about the product, which is shared with the physicians who are actually conducting the trials, along with the pharma organizations or even academic researchers for that matter. And once I think the filing happens, the submission happens, you have the product labels, what is the exact indication of a product. Then you have the package inserts and, product characteristics. So all of these form part of the regulatory realm of things. And these are required for a product to come into the market and even after that. Medical communications, to understand why we need that is because regulatory data, which includes all the patient level data, all the analysis, that goes to the regulatory authorities. It's not public knowledge. Researchers will not see the details of what analysis has gone in, what kind of reports are available to that detail. And that's why it's very important to share with the physician community, the academics, what exactly these trials meant to do. How did they do it? What did they find, right? The scientific discourse, the debates, the arguments will happen in a public domain only when the medical communications happens. So, and what do I mean by medical communications? It has, of course, the publications piece, which you realize is very strong in my area of work, but also along with that, using publications, which are abstracts, posters, oral presentations at conferences. You have different types of manuscripts. It could be the primary manuscript, multiple secondary analysis, white papers, position papers, reviews. And then you have medical education activities. At conferences, you would also have symposia. You would have advisory boards. You could have medical booths where, certain stories are played out, certain narratives are shared. And then you have medical education events, which you may have come across as, increasing by leaps and bounds over the last 1.5 years when things have gone virtual very quickly. So the medics need to keep themselves aware and informed about the latest in their field. And that's where the independent medical education comes into play. When they are accredited, essentially it means they get points for those, then they become CMEs. And it's also required in certain specialties of medicine where they need a particular number of CMEs per year in order to stay certified, in order to continue to practice. So essentially publications, medical events, medical education all together form medical communication. We also have medical information, which is essentially when queries related to a drug or a product from a physician or from a patient is sent directly to the sponsor. And then we are expected to answer those based on data we have, literature that is available. So this whole space is medical communications. And then, of course, we have medical journalism and medical marketing. You've seen a lot of buzz on Twitter these days around, data around COVID, data around approvals, data around vaccines. A lot of that is medical journalism, where essentially someone's taking hardcore scientific data. Hopefully, they're using the right source. There's a lot of misinformation always, but they're using that and converting it into something more easy for the audience to understand. And then you have medical marketing, which is essentially promotional materials, which the commercial side of the organization works with agencies to develop, which is more direct, which has a more it has a stronger impact on what is the uptake of the product is. This happens typically around the launch of a product. And then you have patient materials, and now the lines between this and medical communications is slightly blurring, because we have realized it's not enough that everybody, the scientific community alone knows about it. It's also important that the patients who are actually participating in trials, or patients who want to participate, or patients who are waiting for some kind of cure or a product, has the information to have a discussion with their physicians. Patients are getting more and more involved in the decision making around how their disease will be managed by physicians, especially complicated ones, which involve a multidisciplinary medical team. So this is the realm of what medical communications and other elements is, and where it exactly fits in. I think there's another poll, Arshia, at this stage, which I wanted to pose to the audience today. So based on what I discussed just now, in terms of what are the different elements that are part of medical communications, which of these things, which of these roles do you think is not a part of medical communications? And a heads up, it could be a trick question, but I just wanted to get a sense of those, especially who said you're aware or who are somewhat aware, which looks, when you add up, it looks like around 90% of the people on the line. It would be good to know what you think about what roles essentially are involved in medical communications.
It actually is a very interesting question. When I was making the poll, I could get a sense of it. You're trying to trick everyone into, yeah. So we have 66% voting as of now. So
okay, maybe just a few more seconds, and then we can close.
Yeah. All right.
While we're waiting, and also you will see more and more, the use of social media in medical communications. In the past, it was considered a big no-no when it came to engagement on social media. From the scientific medical side of things, medical communication is from the medical affairs or drug development side of things, not commercial. But more, if you see in the last few years, especially on Twitter and LinkedIn, there are proper debates and discussions happening and scientific discourse happening around papers. In fact, peer reviews get done online, and it's becoming very serious business. And it's a fantastic opportunity to, disseminate science, accurately. So that's definitely another aspect of medical communications. So Arshia, if maybe we can close and we move forward. Is not part of. Okay, yeah. The reality is all of these roles are part of medical communications. You might say, where's the designer fitting into the scheme of things? So these are graphic designers. For example, when you write publications, when you're writing manuscripts, you have figures, etc., which you want to make more creative, you want them to be more high quality for journal submissions. The graphic designers help in those. When we're doing these medical education events, the slides, the Arshia mentioned at the beginning, she's into storytelling. Visual storytelling, digital storytelling is a big piece of medical communications these days. Can you simplify the narrative using visuals? And that's what their role is as graphic designers. We also have, say, mechanism of action videos when things are too complicated. In the space that I work in now, cell and gene, it's highly personalized medicine. If you have read a little bit on that, you're taking essentially T cells from every single individual, modifying them in the lab, creating, CAR Ts out of those, putting it back there. And that gives them the, the ability for the immune system to mount a response against, say, large B-cell lymphomas, acute leukemia. So these are like crucial pieces. So, how do you tell that story using visuals rather than words? It's very important. The reach is fantastic. So designers play a role. Event managers and project managers, so crucial, right? Abstract submissions have deadline, manuscript submissions have deadlines, and timing is very important. So you have project managers who work together with others to make sure that the writers do a job in time that is required in order to make those deadlines, right? If you go to the next, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is, not necessarily just medical communications. This is, I think, at the core of, any communication strategy. This is, and I found this years ago. It's called activation theory of information exposure. And simply put, what it means is you need to have the right message for the right audience, which comes in from the right data. It has to be in the right format, and it has to be timed absolutely well. And to give you an example, even the simplest ones, for example, if you look at YouTubers and those Instagram, although I'm not familiar with Instagram that much, but what I've read in research is those folks know exactly what to post and which time of the day to post because they know their audience so well. The audience segmentation is very clear for them. And it's the same way that approach, works for medical communications. For example, Sheetal mentioned about HEOR data, right? So publications come out of those as well, in addition to the regulatory stuff. Now, if you decide to send those data, present those at a conference which is more focused on the manufacturing side of things, obviously it's not the right audience, and it's going to really bomb. Similarly, if maybe you have chosen clinical data, the data is perfect, your scientific, you just put in too much into your presentation. So the message is unclear. You have the right audience, right data, you don't have the right message. If you have, if you have investigated a little bit, you'll see there's a lot of discussions happening around how scientific posters are developed. Too much information, too much text, not enough visuals, etc. So I think the right format, and then the timing, like I said, a lot of times during, around product launches, the publications, the conference abstract is submitted, the manuscript goes on in parallel. And then at the, when the abstract gets presented at the conference, the manuscript simultaneously gets published in the journal around the time of the presentation. We can time it that way based on discussions with journal editors. And can you imagine the buzz at the conference, especially if it's positive data? The last slide of the presentation, the presenter says, and now the paper is available online for you to read. And that's fantastic, so that's where we are with this. So now the question is, now that you know a little bit more about medical communications, the role it plays, what roles are involved, is this something for you? And I think, like Sheetal mentioned, I think the same things apply. Not everybody comes into the roles fully aware of everything that is required, but I think there are a few things which I, from my personal experience, would like to bring out, so if you really are inclined scientifically, then definitely yes. If you don't feel like reading so much, if you feel like I have read enough during my studies, I don't want to read papers, I don't want to read what's happening in literature, probably this is not for you. But on the other hand, if you find it fascinating to know more, I think that's very important. I think even in this case, basics of biostatistics, to understand the validity, not so much to actually conduct those analysis, but to understand the validity of what's been done, very important. if you're able to write, specifically for the writing roles, if you're able to write, that's fantastic. There are other roles which do not require writing, but it involves the reviewing part of things. So are you able to read a paper, and comment critically as to what could be done to make it better? Eye for detail. It's a professional hazard when you're in medical communications. Even if I look at billboards, if nobody notices, I'll know a spelling mistake, or I'll know a incorrect punctuation. And I think more importantly, medical communications, like the name suggests, is a lot about communicating. You are in the middle where you are coordinating with multiple departments within the organization, with multiple physicians outside the organization, bringing everybody to the table, getting a consensus, building the narrative, and then getting all of them to approve it for you, and then getting it executed. It's a huge task. And so you need to be able to enjoy communicating. And of course, the timelines are there. There needs to be a sense of urgency. So it helps if you're a skilled organizer, if you're eager to learn. And these things, not necessarily only the professional side of things, even if your personal life, if you're a good organizer, your friends say, oh, you arrange fantastic parties or lunches. Your friends always say, okay, why is it that you have so many questions? Why do you want to know everything about everything? Definitely, this is something you might look out for. I think there's one other poll, but let's skip that for now, Arshia, because I see the time. How's it looking in terms of India? And I was mentioning to Arshia yesterday, this is probably the best time to be in medical communications in India at this point. You have Indian pharma organizations, you have MNCs who are setting up offices there. They have already established offices. You have Novartis, you have Lilly, you have Sanofi, you have GSK, you have Pfizer. And then you have medical writing agencies which work and support pharma organizations to develop medical communication materials. And then you have CROs who are more broader, with more scope beyond just writing, who also support events, MedInfo, and other things. And the reason why this is there is, I'll take a minute, is because there's more focus on transparency, data transparency, access to information. And in order to do that, you need to communicate more. And if you want to communicate more, you need to come to specialists who do it for you. And that's why India, with the kind of talent pool, with the awareness and exposure that we have, there's a lot of impetus at this point. There's more investment going in, there's more trials happening, which means more evidence is being generated. And the more evidence being generated means we need to talk about it. And that's why Med comes in. Arshia, is it okay if I take a minute? Arshia, is it okay if I take a minute? Okay.
Should I launch the next poll that you had until you?
No, I think let's. I don't want to cut into Amit's time, because that's going to be very unfair. So I'll talk a little bit about my journey. And I wasn't aware of medical communications till I got into my first job, at GSK Vaccines. And after my master's, I say I didn't have the luxury, because I really wanted to do some research. I didn't have the luxury. I had to get into a role as soon as possible. And in fact, the funny piece is, when I got in, they had different roles, one for regulatory, one for publications. And I got in, they asked me to join the publications team. And I was like, I like the regulatory role, the name of the role much better. Can I join there? And my manager was like, 6 months later, you can decide what you want to do. First, learn this. And I once I got into publications, I just didn't want to leave, and I stayed on there. And then, I started off with, different disease areas, the influenza program. I worked there for close to 6 years. In the meantime, I went to CMC Vellore to do like biostat courses to really understand a little bit more, what the analysis involves. Did some health policy, research at the National Law School, Bangalore. And then, at some point you realize you're outgrowing, what a space or a team can offer. And I was always interested to work in oncology. My father is a cancer survivor, and I wanted to go in. And then Novartis Oncology set up their team there, and I took responsibility for the team working on breast cancer. So we had launch products, and then I managed the team. And then again, 5 years down the line, it's like, what next? Because I'm not learning anything new. And that's what, I've always tried to do. The moment I see I get too comfortable, it's time for you to make a change. So I decided to move out of oncology into pharma, which was a very difficult decision. But then I wanted the role to do, moving away from writing, from project, to move closer to project management, to portfolio management. So essentially overseeing publication strategy, medical education strategy, events, everything. And then, I focused on the publications excellence piece of things for the last few years. And then again, oncology was my calling. So when the opportunity came, I moved back to oncology, this time in the hematology space. And CAR-T is the epitome of, personalized medicine. So I thought, what better way to return? And, it's been fantastic the last year or so, where, I'm learning to understand more of the manufacturing side of things, how do they optimize success, what kind of data, we have multiple indications, and working with medical societies to identify gaps in knowledge, creating those modules for physicians to be more aware of adverse event management, what essentially patient identification could be. So it's been fantastic. And my idea is, I always have been asked, why don't you diversify? Why don't you do other things? And my response has been, there's just so much of things to do within medcoms that I have never felt like leaving. And I'm not sure I'm going to leave at any point soon. So I think, like I said, going back before I finish is, figure out what is it that interests you. And if it doesn't work, change quickly. You have more opportunities these days to switch careers, find more things, test waters, and I would say you should do it. I think Arshia will share the slides with you. And with this purpose, I always feel we need to share more from what our experiences have been. And so with a few like-minded folks among medcoms professionals, we have set up this small group, which essentially, it talks to students, talks to universities, medical colleges. We're trying to bring in that rigor and build that network of medical communications professionals in India. We have a website, and we are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Go try us out. We have a lot of YouTube videos, and these are based from my colleagues all over the world. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Avishek. It was wonderful sharing. I would say very visual for us with the way you shared about your journey, and it's a very, very interesting field, and I'm sure all our participants also really found a lot of value, getting to understand what medcoms is. So in the interest of time, I've seen that we have 2 questions already. We have it in the chat box for Avishek, but in the interest of time, we'll first have Amit. I would like to invite Amit for his presentation. And after that, we are going to take all the questions in the end during the Q&A session. So for everybody's understanding, this webinar is for 1.5 hours. So we still have 30 minutes to go. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Amit to you. I'll share my screen, just give me a moment. Give me a moment. Okay. Amit is a pharmacy postgraduate pursuing PhD pharmacology and has more than 8 years of experience in pharmacovigilance, including ICSR management, signal management, and aggregate reporting. He currently coordinates the preparation of several regulatory documents, including PPRs, RMPs, IB, PADERs, SSRs, DSRs, DSURs, and ad hoc reports, including health authority requests from safety science perspective. He's expert in reviewing and coordinating regular signal detection activities, from the safety database and literature and end-to-end ICSR processing. He has been awarded with Emerging Scientist Award, Young Scientist Award, and has authored more than 15 international publications indexed in PubMed, Elsevier, and Scopus. Thank you for joining in, Amit. And now over to you. So would you be sharing your slides yourself? That or should
yes,
I share
Arshia,
it?
I can do that.
Okay.
Please let me know once my screen is visible.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Arshia. So in interest of time, I'll be starting on with the today's presentation. So the learning objective will be, we will be covering the major domains in pharmacovigilance. I'll throw some light on ICSR perspective, and thereafter we'll be talking a brief about medical writing, what the medical writing and medical writer is and its scope, and thereafter the career opportunities, because most of the questions that we receive on LinkedIn, whether it's from freshers or whether it's from someone who's already in the PV field. So what are the basic career objective, whether it's possible to switch between the two fields, ICSR and medical writing, and how it looks like. So I'll be sharing that with you. So talking about my journey, basically way back in 2013, I joined the organization with as a designation of drug safety associate, where I was made familiar with the ICSR case processing, that is the individual case processing, where I handled all the ICSR steps. Basically, it was an end-to-end case processing, and thereafter I shifted to safety science. I was trained in signal detection, signal validation, and signal assessment part, and I used to handle all the regulatory reports, health authority responses, and the CSR review as well. After that, a much more specialized field, that is the safety science, wherein I am taking care of all the regulatory reports from safety science perspective, and that includes PBER, DSURs, RMP, ACOs, SSR, MEDRA updates, and PADERs as well. So I'll throw some light on what the ICSR is and what actually it means. So basically, talking about the system of safety data gathering, we have in, I would say, a majority, the four key role players that are basically responsible for gathering out information in the form of AE reporting. So we get reports from healthcare professional, patients, and consumers, and thereafter pharmaceutical companies as well, including the regulatory authorities as well. So talking about the pre-approval and post-approval, for basically pre-approval, we have clinical trials and literature, and for post-approval, we have basically the information coming out from all these four stakeholders, if I would have to say, and thereafter the information is added to the safety databases of the MEH. So a little brief information how the process flow in PV or basically in ICSR looks like. So we have basically four pillars wherein we get the information that includes the solicited reports, clinical trials, unsolicited or spontaneous reports, and of course the literature articles as well. So basically information or reports from all these four pillars are added or basically required for the case creation. And talking about the case processing, basically, I wouldn't say this is mandatory or this is something common for all the MEH, but in general, these are the four processes that are taken into account. Talking about the case processing, that is the triage. That means if the case or the literature article is valid or not. Thereafter, the data entry, quality review or the quality control, and thereafter the submission to the health authorities or to the business partners as well. So during this case processing, we have a medical review or the final triage when the case is processed, and simultaneously the follow-up request and the GQs. GQs are basically the guided questionnaire. I'll be sharing that how you can get information from GQs. And this basically comprise the ICSR case processing that is later on kind of when we combine all the ICSR, that leads to aggregate data analysis. And thereafter, the fate of aggregate analysis is the signal detection or assessment that is basically taken up by the periodic reports, like we have PBERS, DSR, DSCORs. So, and after that, we have BR assessment, that is the benefit risk assessment. So what are the basic tasks handled by the case processor? That is basically the case receipt, that the case is received from the various stakeholders, like we have discussed in the previous slide. And after that, there is a data verification and the validity check, kind of a booking or registration of the case in the safety database, data entry, coding of adverse event, and the drug. For herein, I would like to add on that for the drug coding of adverse event, basic we use MEDRA, and for the drug we have WHO dictionary. And thereafter we have the causality assessment. You might be familiar with various tools that we use for the causality assessment. Like I remember over the top of my head right now, one is Naranjo algorithm and the second one is the WHO scale. After that, there is an expectedness assessment, case narrative is written, that is followed by quality check, and thereafter a team that takes care that the case is timely completed within the required timelines. So moving on to the aggregate report or the medical writing. So what the medical writer is and what medical writing involves, basically, a medical writer is basically a professional who basically who has the adequate knowledge and understanding about the medical, scientific, and health terms and concepts as well. So, and it's he's basically taking care of all the medical information and providing that to the different audiences. So medical writer comes from various backgrounds. I'll be sharing that what the difference and what are the prerequisites of medical writing and medical writer is. And basically talking about the medical writing, that involves creation of well-structured scientific documents, that involves clinical research documents, content for healthcare website, health magazines, journals, and news. So medical writing, if I have to classify that into two broad categories, one is regulatory medical writing. And Avishek has already mentioned that what the medical writing is and various kind of channels for the regulatory medical writing and medcoms as well. So one is the educational medical writing. So what are the basic tasks handled by medical writers? So right now I am sharing the two main broad pictures that are handled by the medical writer. But definitely there is a much broader picture talking about the task handled by the medical writer. But yes, I'll be sharing the two broader categories. One is the CROs, that is the clinical research organization, and second one is the healthcare organization and institutes. So what in terms of CROs, what the medical writer provides is basically preclinical research reports, clinical trial protocols, participant information and consent forms, study reports, clinical trial publication, and of course, if we are talking about the regulatory reports, that also are some of the tasks handled by medical writer. So talking about the healthcare organization and the education institute, so definitely the education content, healthcare promotion content, clinical research publication that includes case report, case series, and cohort studies, conference abstract and presentations as well, and patient stories as well. So what are the basic skill set expected for medical writer? So he or she should be familiar with the medical terminology and concepts, strong written education background, and apart from that, strong written communication skills are required. Apart from that, strong research skill. Likewise, we have literature and referencing, searching, critical appraisal of the medical and healthcare literature, and the fact checking. So I'll be sharing a little bit glimpse about this. Apart from that, the analytical skills, if we are talking about the analytical skills, interpretation of the research data and the stats, and visual representation of the data in the form of tables, graphs, and diagrams. Apart from that, last but not the least, an understanding of the ethical principles and the legalities that apply to the medical communication and the publication. So basically, what is expected from ICSR and medical review? So talking about the ICSR, if I would have to say, I'll be sharing a glimpse, but saying that it is not mandatory that every organization or every CRO or every KPO will follow the same. But this is in journal that I have seen over the past few years, talking about the job perspective in ICSRs and aggregate reporting or the medical writing. So basically for ICSRs, freshers are generally preferred, and talking about the aggregate, in journal, companies basically prefer experienced candidate which have more than 1 year of experience in medical writing or aggregate writing. So, and that basically depends upon the job role that the company is providing. In terms of ICSR, we have different job opportunities. Like we have for booking expert, that is their case medical evaluator, that is the CME is there, narrative writer, QC responsible, and the person who is taking care of the submission. So in most of the organization, we have different people who are taking care of these different aspects, but in some of the organization that I'm familiar with, basically 2 or 3 persons are even taking care of these multiple steps. So talking about the aggregate writing, so talking about the aggregate writer, basically the person who is familiar with the end-to-end case writing. So basically, if I'm talking about the PBER or if I'm talking about the DSUR, so if someone is familiar with writing from like in talking discussing about the PBER, if someone is familiar with section writing from section 1 till section 19, that is the PR assessment. So if someone is familiar with all the processes and have the interpersonal skills, how to interact with the different stakeholders. So basically, this is preferred in terms of medical writing perspective, and definitely anyone with the safety science role or having the knowledge about safety science is also a kind of a preferred requirement for the medical writing. So this is something new coming up, talking about the AI. So in terms of ICSR, most of the companies are requiring automation. So apologies with my spelling mistake. So this is basically automation. Basically most of the clients or basically most of the pharmaceutical companies are including automation in some of the job roles like booking. So will that affect the some job roles? Maybe we can discuss that further during the Q&A session. And as of now, talking about the automation, we do not have any kind of a role play coming in for the medical writing perspective. Talking about the job requirements or the JDs for ICSR, graduates and postgraduates are preferred. And if we talk about medical writing, generally, this is in journal that I've seen. So for medical writing perspective, postgraduates, BDS, MBBS, or the qualifications above that, like PhDs, are basically required for the medical writing perspective. So what are the benefits and future perspective in ICSRs and medical writing? So talking about the ICSR perspective, if I would have to say, because since when I entered in the PV domain, this was I would say kind of providing me the backbone of PV reporting and the analysis, and thereafter it becomes very easy for me to switch to the aggregate reporting. So I know what the ICSR and what the information coming in from the patient or from the health authority or from HCP looks like. So this basically provides the backbone of PV reporting. And if anyone needs to switch from ICSRs to the medical writing, so that is, I would have to say, that becomes the predecessor of aggregate reporting. So what the one who is taking care of the ICSR is basically familiar with meta coding, WHO dictionary, and even the GQs, guided questionnaire as well. Because there are some of the events like Delhi, if I have to say, drug-induced liver injury. So we have a specific guided questionnaire or the GQs, or we have a specific questionnaires that need to be sent for that particular event. Even for the drug as well, we have specific GQs that basically vary from MAH to MAH and basically from drug to drug. Apart from that, the person who is taking care of ICSR are familiar with GVP module 5 in broad sense, if I have to say. And the person who is involved in ICSR, they basically should be familiar with query handling and submission. So one of the things that I've learned from ICSR is basically you need to do multitasking. You need to be familiar with how the case will come, how the different priorities have to be set, how if there is any fast track agreement, with a specific MAH or specific company. So that has to be taken account. You should not forget anything talking about the drug or talking about the event. So basically, these are the skill set that are acquired during the ICSR case processing. And definitely one thing we need to maybe you might be thinking about, will the automation impact ICSR case processing? Uh, if I would have to say, there are two sides basically talking about the automation. There are some processes like booking, wherein some information is pre-added in the case from the automation perspective. So that kind of may affect the booking user, but talking about later on perspective like the case medical evaluation or the narrative writing, definitely that won't be affected because and that human knowledge, if I would have to say, or the medical knowledge is required while processing the case, what the AE is, if it is having any causality or not, and what are the different parameters that needs to be taken into account while analyzing the causality assessment. So that we cannot rely totally on the automation perspective, but that is something that we shouldn't be worried about. Will there can be a downsize to the number of job opportunities if automation is having any impact in ICSRs. So talking about the medical writing perspective, definitely a skill set is advanced skill set is required. And I have seen for the medical writers that there is even an option of freelancing as well. Nowadays, post COVID pandemic, I could see number of opportunities have grown for the medical writer, and definitely the primary criteria for most of us is the hike that we are thinking about when we are switching in from different companies or different organizations. So that is something kind of an asset, if I would have to say, the medical writing provides. So one thing talking about the switching, so I have mentioned that there are basically, in broad sense, there are two perspective or the two career opportunities for medical writing. Is one is the end-to-end case processing, and the second one is the safety science that basically deals with the safety of the product. So if talking about the PBUS, let's say we have a designated a section like section 15 and section 16, or maybe thereafter section 18, 19. As well, wherein we talk about the safety of the molecule. So it becomes easy if someone is from medical writing, they can switch to safety science, or maybe the vice versa, they can even opt for end-to-end case writing as well. So if I would have to say, for freelancing, end-to-end case writing is generally preferred. One thing also that is kind of a add-on advantage for the medical writing is, because this is something personally I have seen, that on-site opportunities are even provided for the medical writers, or maybe there's someone who is in the safety science perspective. Because when I entered in the medical writing, so there were a kind of communications or discussions going on with different stakeholders, wherein we have to visit that site. And that was a kind of, because earlier what the people used to think is there are no on-site opportunities, but under COVID pandemic, definitely they have decreased, but hoping for the best, like when this situation will be normalized, on-site opportunities, chances to visit different countries or maybe the different client can also be an asset that the medical writer of the safety science can think of. And talking about the end-to-end case processing, I would say that it is a one-man army, which is basically taking care of multiple sections and taking care and gathering information from various stakeholders. And safety science is something more of a specialized field or a clinical trial oriented. So this is concluding about the medical writing. One should not be mixing this safety science and medical writing, because in most of the companies, if someone is from safety science, they are basically considered as a medical writer. So a medical writer is basically handling all the regulatory information, all the CSR information, and even that person is familiar with the signal detection activities, from signal detection, validation, and assessments as well, and writing DSRs as well. So this is something that we generally receive. What basically are the qualification or the skill set required to enter in the PV domain? What is the difference between jobs for graduates, postgraduates, and PharmD as well, and of course the PhDs. So again, this is something of a trend that I have seen. Maybe that can vary from the company to company or MH to MH or the different KPOs or the different CROs, but this is something in general that we have seen over the past few years. So for the graduates, basically entry level positions are there. They are in KPOs, that is the knowledge processing organization, BPOs, drugs. For like in PV domain, we have DSAs, and for the postgraduates or the PharmD candidates, also there are entry level positions for DSS. And one thing, talking about the graduates and postgraduates, are basically the postgraduates and the PharmD are much more specialized compared to graduate in terms of uh, thesis writing or the article writing or the literature writing, if I would have to say, in terms of review article or research article. So basically, if someone is postgraduate or having PharmD degree, they can even opt for the medical writing. But again, this is not something hard and fast rule that this will apply to all the organization. But yes, this is something more of a trend that we have seen. Talking about the PhD, definitely there are entry level positions as well for they can apply for DSA medical writing. Apart from that, as Sheetal and Abhishek has mentioned, that there are open doors for epidemiology and biostats as well, because they have a skill set that distinguishes them from graduates and postgraduates. I, being a PhD scholar, have seen that what the difference is. We are familiar with what kind of tools that we need to use, what kind of a different softwares are that can basically help us to ease out our work. So what the analysis is required for epidemiology, what kind of work or we need to do in epidemiology, like we need to gather information from literature article, what the meta-analysis look like, and what basically will be the crux that we can get from the epidemiology or biostats that can be required even in even in aggregate reports as well. Because for the someone who's having skill set in epidemiology and biostats, that can be an asset for the medical writing, because in DSRs, if I have to say specifically, that basically provides the backbone of the analysis that we do in terms of safety analysis. So the second perspective in terms of graduates is, so graduate for talking about the job. Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me, Amit, we are overshooting time, so you'll have to wind up so that we have some time for questions.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, no problem. So this is something that maybe we can share the slide deck with you, but in terms of all these graduation, post-graduation, PhDs, you can see that more opportunities are definitely for the graduates as compared to the, for postgraduates, PharmD and PhD as compared to the graduates. And something talking about the qualification and the prerequisites to enter in PV and CT domain. Generally, it has been seen that if you are a postgraduate and PhD, and if you have a research experience, so most of the companies, what they do is basically they take you as a fresher. But in terms of PhD, if you are having any PhD, that can be having a monetary benefit when you are entering in a PV or CT domain. But again, that depends upon the job role that you are provided with. So this is something, the domains that we have in PV and clinical trials. So I think different speakers have already mentioned what the medcoms and what the literature writing, review writing, and what the scientific writing is. So this is something, because this is kind of a in broader picture, I have shared with you what the safety science is, regulatory, and basically if someone is opting or someone is looking for any job roles or any job in PV, they can opt for any of them depending upon the qualification and skill set they have. So Arshia, that is all from my end, and I think